how is it that impersonal philosophies like Buddhism and so have become so popular in the West?
Well, it is again what I was mentioning before. That people have become frustrated with the exoteric, with the world of matter. And so they want to get beyond that. And the philosophies of Buddhism and other impersonal philosophies, they teach a process of negation, negating this world, mentally negating. And so, Prabhupada says that initially this actually helps one become determined in spiritual life. It is a kind of, it's temporary, but at least initially it is a kind of liberating experience. Oh, I can actually cancel this world out. I don't have to take it so seriously. Because it's really problematic for people when they're suffering so many anxieties and distress. And they're taking it all so, real. There's no escape from it. And this is how in the Western world people have been trained. The Western world, its religious background is Christianity. Now Christianity has very good points, obviously. There's a lot of bhakti in Christianity, but Christianity has a problem. It has from our point of view, it has one big defect. And the one big defect is that in the Christian theology, the doctrine, since the time the Christian church was formed, the doctrine has been maintained that the soul, there's an admission of a soul, but the soul must have a material body in order to act. And this is a doctrine. And it's still there. Maybe Christians today aren't aware of it. I think most Christians today have very little awareness of what Christianity is. Except maybe that you go to church whenever. Even people who do believe in Christianity, they often don't go to church very much. They just go for the ceremony and that's it. But the underlying doctrine there is that there is a soul, but the soul must have a material body. And so that's where you get this idea of the resurrection of the body. That on some fine day, the trumpets in heaven will blow, and all the graves will open, and the bodies will pop out, like in a zombie movie. And this is, I'm not joking. This is the Christian theology. And every, we say, mainstream church upholds this doctrine. The Catholics, the Protestants, Sweden is a Lutheran country, but all these, maybe, I don't know, but you have that, what was his name, Emanuel Swedenborg? Maybe he's rejected that doctrine. I don't know much about him, but he was some kind of mystic. But the Swedenborgian church has only in the whole world 65,000 members, so that's the major churches, they accept this ideology that the body must be brought out of the ground and must be renewed. And therefore you'll find in the writings of the great theologians of the past, there was much debating about what to do, how the body should be disposed of at the time of death. That's why they bury the bodies. And there was even fear. What will happen to a Christian if his body is burned up in a fire? Or if his body is eaten by animals? Then the body is dissolved. And so there was a great fear that Christians who have died in that way, they won't be able to go to heaven because they've lost their body. Then other theologians said, no, but the atoms of the body will still be there somewhere, scattered, and God will miraculously bring all the atoms together on the day of judgment. And the body will just, whoosh, suddenly form like out of a cloud. And then there was a question, yes, but some Christians, they died when they were still little children, others when they're old people, so will everyone just go to heaven, as a little baby, or as a 95-year-old lady, or some died because their heads were chopped off, or, arms and legs chopped, so will they come to heaven like cripples, amputees? And then the theologian said, no, everyone's body will be perfectly restored, and all the defects of the body, blemishes, whatever, will be corrected, and everyone will ascend to heaven in a body that's 30 years old. That is an official doctrine of the church. You may not know it, but it is an official doctrine of the church. It's still on the books that everyone who goes to heaven will go in a body that's 30 years old. You may not have known that, but I can provide you the actual Greek written by the theologians. This is written more than 1,000 years ago, and it still stands as Christian doctrine. So therefore, what I'm to bring us up to date in answer to your question, therefore you see the Christian attitude towards the body is that it is very real. It is a very real thing. The body is something you hang on to. So this is how Christians view the world. If the body is real, then the world is real, and all the problems of the world are very real. And therefore, this is a great recipe for a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety and suffering as a result of clinging to, they actually think that there is a spiritual necessity to cling to the body as the self. They believe that the body is not the whole self, but it is part of the self. There's the soul, and there's the spirit, and there's the body. They have these, it's a threefold conception: soul, spirit, and body. And this is actually there in Judaism and in Islam also. These are all, it's actually the same religion. It's actually the same religion. They all trace their origin to a patriarch named Abraham. And Abraham in Sanskrit, Abraham, means not a Brahmana. Whoever this person was, he was Abraham. He was not a Brahmana. And that's why they have this, this very firm bodily concept. So, therefore, anyway, although I don't want to ridicule these religions, they have their good parts also, good sides. But this fact is there, that if you feel that the body is necessary, then you are forced to accept all the problems that embodied life bring. And then their solution, of course, is that, when you're suffering from problems, you go to God and you pray. Please, God, help me with these problems. But this motivation, just like in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread, deliver us from evil. This type of motivation to pray for our material well-being, our bodily well-being, has been very much reduced in Christian civilization as a result of the rise of science and technology. Why pray for your daily bread when you can go to the supermarket and buy it? So people don't do that anymore. And people are relying more and more on science, technology, medicine, these things. They don't pray to God. So anyway, they're overwhelmed with anxieties. And they don't see a way out. And then comes along Buddhism and other forms of impersonalism, which say this is all illusion. The impersonalists tell you that you're not the body. They equate personality with the body. So they're impersonalists, which means they say you're not the body. You're not a person. Now, Christianity is very much a personal religion, but unfortunately, as I say, they think person. So then, for people of this background, that's very liberating. It's very wonderful to find out that, hey, I'm not the body, and I don't have to take all this seriously. And they find it, yes, a very liberating exercise just to negate it. And the Buddhists and other impersonalist disciplines, and they give a very well thought out process for negating physical and mental distress. But that also won't last, you see. Because as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, still we have to act. We agree, Bhagavad Gita says we're not the body. But while we're in this world, still we have to act. So just sitting and thinking, as it is stated, neti, neti, not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. That's not real, that's not real, that's not real. That is not going to put food on the table. You still have to work, you still have to eat, you still have your social responsibility. Unless one goes to the cave, but who's going to do that? You see? So it's kind of like a big, moving around in a big loop that brings you back to the same point. So in Krishna consciousness, the answer is, yes, we are not the body. We are soul. The soul is the person. And the body fits the person like a glove fits the hand. So the answer is not to negate the person or the body, but to engage the person and his body in Krishna's service. And by doing that, then we come to our actual spiritual identity as spiritual persons, as transcendental persons. We see the difference. You realize the difference between yourself and the body. And so the miseries of life, the anxieties, they pertain only to the body. The actual person is above that. And this can be realized by anyone. The example, Prabhupada gives a nice example of a coconut. I guess here in the West, when you buy a coconut in the shop, you get this brown nut with the hard shell, about this big. But actually, when they come from the tree, they're encased in a kind of big green, it looks like a big, huge green seed pod or something. Coconuts get about this big when they come from the tree. So you have to cut through this green covering, and then you get the nut inside. So when the coconut is ripe, then you can rattle. You take the seed pod. This is how they know that it's ripe. They shake it because the nut inside is loose, just a little loose, and it rattles. It rattles around. Before it's ripe, it doesn't rattle. So you can hear it rattle around, and then you know this one is ripe. So Srila Prabhupada said that when one becomes Krishna conscious, that green seed pod is like the body, and the nut is like the soul. And so you shake the body, and you can hear, in this sense, the soul is different. So the body, the green seed pod, can be chopped, whatever, but the nut inside is different from that. So similarly, when one understands I'm not the body, he's still using the body. But if bad things happen to the body, he understands I'm not that. That is different from me. Just like this seat is different from me. So the soul is seated in the body. So if this seat is damaged, I'm not damaged. You see? So this is the Krishna conscious answer. Yes? Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
In all these other religions, Christianity and Islam and so, they all talk about the devil like a person who is equally strong as God. But who is actually, is it a person, or like how should one understand it?
Yes, okay, so the first point about equally strong as God. Judaism, which is the oldest one, and then Christianity, and then Islam. As I said, they're coming out of one tradition. And there is a background to these three religions. There's a background religion. There's a religion out of which these three religions have appeared. And that background is Zoroastrianism, which is a very ancient religion of Persia. And there's a few... This religion now is very, very small. There's only a few thousand followers of... They're called the Parsis now. Around Bombay, they're mostly these Zoroastrians. They left Persia when it became Muslim and came to India. So Zoroaster, he's known as Zoroaster. He's actually mentioned in the Vedic scriptures, in the Puranas. His Sanskrit name is Jarashastra. And he taught the doctrine of dualism. So he was into demigod worship and fire sacrifice, and so these aspects are still there, even now in the modern Parsi religion. So these are the Vedic elements: demigod worship and fire sacrifice. And he saw the universe as divided between the demigods, or the beings of light, and the beings of darkness, and each has their leader. So in Zoroastrianism, the leader of the beings of light is called Ormazd. So Ormazd, as far as I know, this is a form of the name Varuna. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into this, but this all has its origins in very ancient Vedic tradition. And then Ormazd is opposed by Ahriman, who is equivalent to Satan. And there's an eternal struggle between the two. So this is dualism, religious dualism. And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are influenced, very much influenced by this Zoroastrian dualism. So this is where they get this idea of God and equally powerful or almost equally powerful opponent, Satan. And this is not, this is a concept limited to the material world. It's a materialistic concept, ultimately. It's cosmic, but it's still within the realm of the sphere of this universe, because it is coming out of demigod worship. There is not really a conception of transcendence beyond. And then, so then your question is, who is this Satan? So in the Bible, Satan appears in the Garden of Eden as a serpent who convinces Eve to then convince Adam that they should eat from the fruit of knowledge on this tree. So this story is very ancient. This story is before the Old Testament. This story you find in the Puranas, in the Bhavishya Purana, of a person named Adama, his wife Havyavati, and they are mleches, they are like tribal people, and they were seduced by the personality of Kali. It was called Kali Yuga, so the personality of Kali appeared to them in the form of a serpent. And he told them to take this fruit of knowledge. In the Persian language, it's the Persian word is Homa. And this is the ancient Persian language is similar to Sanskrit, so the Sanskrit equivalent is Soma. So Soma is a kind of nectar which is produced from sacrifice, which is only supposed to be taken by Brahmanas. So the personality of Kali convinced Adam and Eve to take this Soma, this fruit of, or this juice, this rasa from sacrifice. So they were not qualified because they're low-class people. They were not qualified to take this. And that was considered a sinful act. So this is the origin of that old story. So anyway, Satan, if he's taken to be the personality of Kali, as on the evidence of the Bhavishya Purana, then he is a real person. He's a demigod in charge of sin. The demigods are each in charge of some particular aspect of the cosmic drama. So Kali is in charge of sin. That's his department. So his business is to promote sin among human beings, to make it appear to be very nice, to engage in sinful activities. He's very clever at that. So that's what he does. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.